Okay, so you want to sit down and finish the report. Here is the plan you have in your head. You close every tab except the one you need. You put your phone face down in a drawer. You put your headphones on at about 2 in the afternoon. And then you work, and you do not look up until the report is finished. That is the plan, and it is not a bad plan.
Zumithadar, min widders Jopingi, you middle door, phantom fuendendais, corn don fendai.
You read the same paragraph 3 times, and nothing went in. But somewhere around the 20-minute mark, the room went quiet in your head, and you stopped hearing the air conditioning. By 3:30, you had written more than you had written all week. Your coffee went cold next to you, and you did not notice. When you finally looked up, it was 5:10. So you know it is possible. You have been in that state, which is why it is so strange that you cannot get back into it on a normal Tuesday at the same desk with the same drawer and the same headphones. So here is the question this video is going to answer. When you sit down to work on one thing, how long do you actually stay on it before you leave? Not how long you sit at the desk, how long your attention stays on the one thing in front of you. There is a real measured number for that. It is much smaller than you think. And near the end, I am going to tell you where the 8-second attention span came from, because it did not come from anybody studying attention. It came from a marketing report about a fish. In 2025, a team publishing through Simon Fraser University in Canada pulled together what actually happens to a person sitting in front of a screen all day. They did not ask anybody how focused they felt. Asking people how focused they feel is how you get answers like, pretty good, mostly. Instead, researchers tracked information workers with sensors on them. They logged every time the screen in front of a person changed. They measured heart rate. They measured blood pressure. They watched faces. Here is the first number. A typical information worker switches screens 566 times in a day. 566. A working day is about 8 hours. So that is more than once a minute, every minute, from the moment they sit down until the moment they leave. Here is the second number, and it is the one worth remembering. When somebody is moving between browser windows, their attention stays on any one window for an average of 47 seconds. 47 seconds is not long enough to read this paragraph out loud. It is about one lift ride in a tall building. It is shorter than the advert you skip. When somebody stays inside one task instead of moving between windows, that number goes up to about 2.5 minutes. Still not long, but 3 times longer. And the sensors showed the cost was not only time. Interrupted workers had higher blood pressure. When researchers watched their faces, the interrupted group looked angry, and the uninterrupted group looked neutral. In one set of hospital records, 208 prescriptions out of 239 contained an error, written by physicians who were switching attention rapidly while they wrote them. So the first study counted how often a person leaves. A second study measured what the leaving costs. Also in 2025, a team publishing through Merrimack ran something much smaller and much more controlled. Here is what they did. Researchers gave people a simple sorting task. Images came up, and each person had to put each image where it belonged, as fast as they could. Then the researchers measured one thing, how many milliseconds it took to respond. With nothing else going on, people responded in 262 milliseconds. That is about a quarter of a second. That is roughly as fast as a person can react to anything at all. Then the researchers put a television episode on in the room and asked people to do the same sorting task while it played. The same task, the same people, the same images. Response time went from 262 milliseconds to 762 milliseconds. That is a 290% slowdown. The same person 3 times slower on a task they had already learned. And it was not the television that mattered. It was the second thing. When researchers gave people a nursery rhyme to recite instead, with no screen in the room at all, response time still went up. From 813 milliseconds to 1032, a nursery rhyme. Something you have known since you were 4, that takes no effort, that you could say in your sleep. Adding it still cost about a quarter of a second on every single response, which means the brain was never doing two things. The brain was leaving one thing and arriving at another, over and over, and paying for the trip every time. So put the two studies next to each other. The Simon Fraser work tells you how often you leave, 566 times a day, with 47 seconds on a window before you go. The Merrimack work tells you what each one of those departures costs, not the whole task, just the leaving and the coming back. Now look at what neither study mentions, your phone. The 566 switches were counted on the computer. The 47 seconds was measured between browser windows. The nursery rhyme had no screen in it at all. Every one of those numbers came from a person at a desk, moving between things that were already on the desk in front of them. Your phone was in the drawer for all of it, and you still left the report 500 times. Which brings me to the 8 seconds. I said I would tell you where that number came from. Here it is. You have heard this one. The average human attention span has fallen to 8 seconds, which is less than a goldfish, which manages 9. Most people have heard it. It gets repeated in conference talks and news segments and on the first slide of a lot of presentations about young people. So where did it actually come from? In 2015, Microsoft's Canadian office published a consumer report about attention and advertising. It was a marketing document written for people who buy advertising. In it, there is a line saying the average human attention span had fallen from 12 seconds in the year 2000 to 8 seconds in 2013. And beside that line, a comparison to a goldfish. Journalists went looking for the study behind it. The report pointed at a website called Statistic Brain. Statistic Brain pointed at the National Center for Biotechnology Information and the National Library of Medicine, which are enormous archives holding millions of papers, and it named no paper. Reporters at the BBC went through it and could not find the research. Nobody has produced it since. And the goldfish half is worse. There is no experiment establishing that a goldfish holds attention for 9 seconds. Goldfish have been trained to run mazes and remember them for months. So the number everybody quotes about attention was never measured, and the animal it was measured against was never tested. Now look at what happens when somebody does measure it. 47 seconds, not 8, almost 6 times longer than the folklore. And it came from sensors on real people doing real work. That is the part that should change how you feel about your own afternoon. You have been carrying a number that says you are broken, and getting worse. It was made up. What is real is smaller and much more specific. On a screen moving between windows, a person stays about 47 seconds, and the researchers who measured that were not describing a personal failing. They were describing what a screen full of windows does to whoever sits down in front of it. So, 3 things, in the order you meet them. 1. Count your windows before you count your willpower. The 47-second number was measured between browser windows, not between apps on a phone. So before you start, close the ones that are not the report, not because tabs are evil, because every one of them is a place your attention can go without you ever deciding to go there. 2. Check the room, not just the desk. Researchers measured classrooms beside a railway line and found that when trains went past, the noise hit 65 to 68 decibels, above the 55 decibel limit set for schools. Across 98 children, that noise accounted for about 40% of the difference in how well they concentrated. 40% from something none of those children chose and none of them noticed. 3. Decide when you are going to leave. Researchers tracked undergraduates using social media during study sessions, and the difference between a break that helped and a break that wrecked the session was whether the student planned it. The students who chose the break beforehand came back sharper. The students who reached for the phone because the work felt bad did not come back at all. So, stop trying to hold on for 2 hours. Nobody holds on for 2 hours. 47 seconds is not a measure of how weak you are. It is a measure of how many doors are open around you, and doors are something you can close. You do not need more attention. You need fewer places to put it. Send this to a friend who is trying to get one hard thing finished. You will make it easier for them.